Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Matters That Matter. I'm Simran, and I'm in a conversation with my mentor, Suzy Singh. Suzy, ending of romantic relationships can be something very complicated and painful for a lot of people. So today, I want you to briefly tell us how can one get over their ex-partner?
So I think the first important thing, Simran, is to figure out whether it is a breakup or it's a breakdown. Because in these times when we have a lot of interaction 24/7 with our partners or with the object of your love, it becomes very difficult to discern whether this is just a terrible fight or whether this is the end of the relationship. And I think a lot of people go through several thoughts of breaking up before they arrive at the final breaking up. And it's a bit like dying many times before you actually die, because it can be a very difficult experience because you think you're breaking up, but actually you're not breaking up. You're just having a terrible fight. So I think if you are at this point where you think you're about to break up, before you arrive at that decision, take a deep breath, give yourself a little time, and just say, I'm reviewing the relationship. So if it is a breakdown, then you don't have to suffer the terrible pangs of breakup, and you can address the breakdown in a better way. So take a couple of days off. I think these days, even 48 hours of no communication with your partner is too much to ask. But at least if you have mentally spoken to yourself and said, I am simply reviewing where this relationship is going, then it's not going to be so painful. But if you have arrived at that point where you think that, no, this is breakup for real, then you must ask yourself, how did you arrive at that decision? How are you so sure that this is breakup and not breakdown? And I think some ways of evaluating that, and I know a lot of people know this kind of instinctively, but it helps if we can have some yardstick of measurement. So if you can ask yourself, in the last 6 months, has this relationship brought me more distress, more agony, more personal pain than joy? That's the first question you need to ask. You know, just like you say that when you're cleaning up your wardrobe, you need to ask, if you've not worn something for 1 year, discard it. It's a bit like saying, if this relationship has brought me nothing but pain in the last 6 months, then it's probably reached its expiry date.
Right.
Thing to evaluate is, has your partner built you up or broken you down in these last 6 months? Now, if there is more than 70% occasions where he or she has broken you down and not built you up, then clearly you're heading towards a break up, because you're not good for each other. And it doesn't mean that either of you are bad. It's just that the two of you together are trouble. You're not good for each other. So I think it's important to sit down and do this kind of very diagnostic approach to the relationship in a very clinical way, which isn't always easy, because of course your feelings are going to come in the way, and particularly if you've just had a bad breakdown and you are hurting. But give it at least 24 hours before you sit down and do this clinical evaluation, because if you're not good for each other, then what are you doing by investing more time, energy, and feelings into that relationship? That's very important to ask, because what is the future of that relationship then? So I think these kind of approaches, and each one can add to this diagnostic kit for themselves. They may have their own parameters they'd like to add, but it serves if you can really view it in a very objective way and decide whether you want to spend the rest of your life with this person, because that's the only kind of relationship that's worth continuing, or you think that, the best is past. We were very good in the beginning, but we are no longer good for each other, which is why I said, look at the last 6 months. How's it been for you two? And if you ended up spending most of your time arguing, fighting, disagreeing, being sad, hurting each other, then clearly the relationship is not conducive towards bringing joy. The whole idea of two people being in a relationship is to support each other, grow, and become more than they presently are. And if that relationship is not contributing to that mutual growth, then perhaps it's time to part ways in a more mature and friendly way without hurting each other. So that's the very first aspect, which is breakup, or is it a breakdown? Then I think it's important to, if you've decided that this is breakup time, then the first thing is, how are you going to fill the void? Because a lot of times I've seen people go back into relationships that don't deserve to be back in, only because of the habit of spending the whole day texting, talking, being with each other. And this fear of loneliness, this fear of, oh my God, I'm going to have no one to speak to or text, or no one to share my ups and downs and joys and sorrows, or no one to just unpack my day with, can be very terrifying. So please evaluate before you break up. How am I going to fill the void that ending this relationship is going to create in my life? Because if you do not plan for that, then your habitual nature, and we know that humans are creatures of habit, we will just go back into that relationship even though we don't want to, and then shortchange ourselves, because we are going to end up in exactly the same place, maybe a few days or a few weeks down the line. So that's the second aspect. The third aspect is, don't personalize the negativity. Now, very often when you are going through the motions of breakup, and it's a process, it's not something that you just slice off a body part and it's done. It takes many days for you to actually undo the relationship in that sense, to stop relating to that other person, to stop thinking about that other person. And I find that in that process, a lot of times people will start turning the blame inwards and telling themselves, maybe I wasn't good enough, right enough in the relationship. Maybe I couldn't sustain the relationship. Maybe I did more than my share of errors. Or maybe I just wasn't good looking enough or smart enough. And suddenly all those worthiness issues become ascribed to the breakup. And this is just the negativity bias playing up in your head. It's nothing more than that. But you are already low and you're already down. And now you're adding to that all these terrible thoughts about how you were the cause of the relationship. So it's very important to be vigilant about the fact that you do not start eroding your self-esteem through your internal self-talk. I wonder if you've done that, if you've heard people do that to themselves, Simran.
Yeah, of course I have. I mean, it's very, I think, natural for someone to doubt themselves, especially in all the negativity of an end of something, of any kind of relationship.
Yeah. So very important to depersonalize. And I think leading on from there, it's important to defantasize, because suddenly when you're deciding that I can't be in this relationship anymore, the mind is going to start fantasizing two things. One is how good it was in the beginning, or it'll start imagining the romanticizing the relationship itself. So it'll go into all those, I will say Bollywood romantic kind of fantasizing with the ex, and not focus on the last 6 months. So, you'll think about the first dinner date he took you on, and how he would send you the gifts, and how sweet he'd be, and how he'd compliment you. And then you start aching because you're going to start missing those good times. That's fantasizing the relationship. And suddenly your focus has shifted from the last 6 months and the reason why you broke up to how it was in the beginning.
Right.
The hope that maybe you could magically have waved a wand and recovered the quality of the relationship that was in the early stages. But we all know that that's not true because, that's the honeymoon phase when both the partners are on their best behavior.
Yeah.
And that really isn't how it happens. So defantasize is very important. The second aspect of defantasize is you're suddenly going to start thinking, again, fantasizing, that your ex is having an absolutely rocking time. And your mind is going to tell you that, listen, I am miserable, I am hurting, I am in pain trying to get over this. And he's having a blast. He's probably going out drinking with his buddies, or he's meeting other women and he's dating other women who are better than me, more good looking, who is slimmer than me, who are prized catch. Now, this is actually happening, and maybe he's going through an even more difficult time than you are trying to break up.
Right.
But that's not what you're going to believe. Your mind is going to believe that
he's having a gala time.
Because we know that's how the mind works. The mind is going to magnify your pain in comparison to his. And it's going to tell you that he is really qualified at the breakup and snap your fingers and get out of the relationship kind of thing. And I don't know how to do this. So I'm suffering, but he's not suffering. That's an untruth. So watch out for your mind telling you that, because that's only going to make you feel more miserable.
Right.
And I think at this stage, it's important to come to a degree of acceptance, draw the line and say, if you're sure that this is breakup, that it's over, and disconnect from all communication. Now, here's an error a lot of people make. They decide to keep at least one channel of communication open. So, they will trick their brain into saying, okay, but I blocked him on WhatsApp and I've blocked him on Insta, but maybe they're still on LinkedIn chat, or maybe they'll keep some option open, either the email option is open or something. So they're tricking their brain saying, but I blocked him across the board, but you've kept one window open and you're hoping that he's going to come back and tell you that he's miserable too, or she's miserable too, So the important thing is, don't trick yourself. If you have decided, it's your call. Don't wait for him to dump you or for him to come back to you. You take that call. You own your decision and you say, this is it. And I will cut communications across the board. Now, and this should not be done in a angry and hostile way. It should be done in a mutually agreed way that we're not good, and so we are going to discontinue communicating with each other, because there's no way we can get over this thing if we keep talking to each other. So cut communications. That is really important. And having cut the communication, please don't be tempted to go stalking social media accounts, or to thinking about who is he dating and who is he meeting, and what do you think he's doing at this point in time, because you know his routine so well. So do not do what I mentioned, the second step, which is to fill the void. Your brain will naturally go into those thoughts because you are so aligned with his timetable, so to say. You know so well what he does and what are. And so your mind will habitually go towards thinking about him at that point in time. And that's just going to make it harder for yourself. So cut the communication, both external and internal, in your own head, and go into the grieving process. Now, we know the grieving process, the 5 stages of grief involve first the anger. So maybe you can focus on the hurt. What really caused the breakup? There has to be that final straw that broke the camel's back. So there's going to be some disagreement, some fight. Focus on that. Deal with it instead of brushing it under the carpet. Focus on the last 6 months and all of the reasons why you thought that this relationship was not good for you. And when you focus on that, you will go through the first stage of grieving, which is anger. Once you've dealt with the anger, you can, the first stage of grieving is denial. The second stage is anger. So by accepting and focusing your attention on what caused the breakup, you will move from denial to the second stage, which is anger. From anger, then move into the bargaining stage, where you'll still want him to come back, or you'll be tempted to pick up the phone and call him in a vulnerable moment. And that's when you need to remind yourself, I am not going to do this. And that's going to take a lot of willpower, because when you're bargaining with your own mind and you're feeling very, very vulnerable and low, it's very easy for you to give in to that moment.
Temptation. Yeah.
And perhaps you might like to have someone that you confide in about what you're going through, and you reach out to that other person instead of calling your partner, so that
Right.
you can, tell them that I'm craving to call him, and can you help me? Can you talk me out of it? So having some support system really helps at that point in time. That is going to lead to depression, which is the fourth stage. And, there may be a sadness, the grief of loss, all of that coming up for you, because after all, you've invested time and energy in that relationship and a lot of intense and deep feelings. So go through that sadness. It's okay, and it's perfectly normal, and it's fine for you to do that. And having gone through that, you will finally arrive at acceptance. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to go through the 5 stages in this precise sequence. Any one of these 5 stages could come before or later, but you need to see yourself actively moving through this grieving process. Having done that, you arrive at the 7th aspect, which is, now that you have gone through the grieving process, that your mind is beginning to accept that things have changed, I am now dealing with a new reality. You need to now rebuild your relationship with yourself. This is a really important one, because you have in many ways wounded yourself, you've worn yourself out, you've exhausted yourself, you may have suffered some amount of self-esteem or shame issues. You may have felt deeply hurt with the loss and having wasted so many years of your life being with a certain person. At that point in time, you need to really be compassionate with yourself. You need to refocus on your strengths, on all of your talents and capabilities, and you need to treat yourself in cotton wool at that point in time, and remind yourself how precious, how important, how worthy you are, and how you really belong to the world. It's important to feel safe. It's important to feel a sense of belonging in the rest of your community. And it's important to build yourself up. That can really help you go through the breakup in the most constructive and least destructive fashion, because otherwise you can end up causing an enormous amount of internal pain to yourself, which you don't really deserve. But because you don't know how to go through the breakup process, you end up unconsciously, unintentionally hurting yourself. So broadly, these are the 7 stages that you need to work with if you're going through a breakup.
So, Suzy, like you spoke about filling in the void, one advice that I see being thrown around a lot when it comes to breakups is that people tell you to distract yourself. And another thing is that people have this concept of time frame, a particular time frame which is appropriate to grieve. Say someone finds him or herself grieving for more than 6 months, they're like, oh, this is too much. I need to move on. So can moving on be forced, or is it something that we have to allow? Another question that I'll just join to this is that certain people think that jumping into another relationship immediately after a breakup can really help them move on. Does that help people move on? Is that a helpful way to do this, or does that harm people even more?
Well, I have always, my personal opinion on this is that people should take a little time to tend to their wounds before they move on. And there's always been the old theory about the rebound relationship. Now, I find that today people find it absolutely impossible to do without a rebound relationship. The void is intense, that they actually said, listen, I need another anchor to help me out of this relationship. And if you are doing that, then it's very important that both you and the person involved know that this is a rebound equation. And maybe you don't want to get into a romantic relationship with that person, and you can spell it out and say, I need support to let go of my past, so that both people involved in that rebound equation are aware of the reason that they are investing yourself or you're investing in that relationship. If you are one of those people who has this enormous strength to be able to do this on your own because you have another anchor, which could be your inner journey, which could be your spirituality, your faith, that is absolutely remarkable, because that will really help you build the relationship with yourself. But there are very few people who are able to do that. Common thing is for people to seek out another equation. Now, and usually it is an equation with the opposite gender. Very rarely do we also find very good friendships where people of the same gender are really boosting your morale and giving you a soft landing to work through this process of the breakup. But yes, there is an abundance, and I don't think it's about right and wrong. I just think as long as you're not rolling through relationships and getting romantic for the wrong reasons, because when you're hurting, you can be very blind and you can fall in a relationship with another person. And when I say fall, I literally mean fall, because you're blinded by your own grief. And you're in that relationship for all the wrong reasons, and the other person may not know. So, which is why I said that if you are going that route, and there's nothing wrong with that, just be clear about your intention, so you don't end up hurting either yourself or the other person, or you don't end up making a wrong choice. And what was your first question? Because I know the second one kind of took precedence.
The first question was that sometimes people set a time frame for themselves that I should be over in 2 months or 3 months. Otherwise, they feel shame, you know.
I don't think you can put a time frame to how quickly you can move over, because it depends on your personal nature. It depends upon the intensity of the relationship. It depends on how invested you were in it. It depends on how much else you had happening in your life. For example, people who have what I call a well-spread portfolio will recover faster. What I mean by that is that you're invested a lot in things like your career, or you have a startup and you have some other passions, you have a sport that you're very invested in, you have a very good set of friends, then your relationship has consumed maybe 50-60% of your time, and you may be more easy, you may find it easier to get over it because you're going to throw yourself into your other passions. But if you're the sort of person for whom it was that relationship was 80% of what your life was all about, now that is so much harder, because that relationship was everything for you.
Right.
So the intensity of loss or the felt loss is much greater. So you can't, you can't have an equal rule for everybody. It has to be very individual and very personal. Of course, being stuck in that grief also for too long means you're not going to, means you got stuck at one of the 5 stages. So then you need to nudge yourself and say, okay, as long as I'm moving through the stages, it's okay, because I don't want to get trapped here forever. I don't want to never be able to trust another person, or never to be able to build a healthy, harmonious relationship with another person. That is also very important.
Right.
So both extremes, I think, need to be looked at, and it's better to follow the middle path where you don't remain forever stuck and you don't jump from one relationship to another like a rebound immediately.
Right. So I think it's very important. I think we can take away from this that it's very important to be honest to ourselves about the situation we find ourselves in, to allow ourselves to grieve and to honor our individual timelines. Right?
I agree completely.
Thank you so much, Suzy, for shedding light on this. I hope this helps everyone who's watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.